ugly truth. Most of you here, on your way to this established place, have been to a general store, have been to a factory that has had child labor. You've been served tea by someone who's 7 years old, and we have to confront it. We can't look away from this truth and say that it doesn't exist. It does in our society. Why does it exist? It exists because Bangladesh itself has a constrained budget. It's not that Bangladesh is corrupt and it can't solve the problem. It's that it actively looks away from it. It says that we'll do more than we can, but we can't. As a society, we need to stand for truth and understand that compromises are okay, even if they seem morally unjust. They end up creating a better avenue. And through my speech, I'll show you.
Comes up in the 7 minutes is probably not a team that should win this debate to begin with. But moreover, they give us a very extreme characterizations as to how the developing world is working now, right? Because they tell you that you need to reconstruct your economy entirely in order to get the kinds of changes that you want to have. But we tell you in countries like Bangladesh, they have been reconstructing their economy till now, and their policies that they're trying to enact has been already into place. So we are saying that in countries like this, they're already trying to take out the idea of child labor and trying to make conditions better for this child to begin with. So just because child labor exists in these kinds of countries is not a reason enough to justify for it to continue within the societies to begin with, where we see progression where we see the governments of these kind of countries trying to bring up progression to begin with, and they do not have the right to stop this kind of progression entirely. But moreover, they did not give us as to how these children are going to make the contracts with while they're going to be.
Children are already suffering. They don't have childhoods. They're starving. They're in need of food, and they're always oppressed by people around them, where they're considered beggars and cannot get any social standing in the society around them, where they aren't even considered as humans. So therefore, their point about these children needing their childhoods no longer stands, because these children don't have childhoods to begin with. Now, what will I tell you in my speech today? I will talk about the exclusivity of legalizing child labor in these developing nations, where these children have to work anyways. Now, first of all, my first speaker told you how illegal child labor happens anyways, and
the structural changes that we try to talk about, because you assume that developing countries, while they're being developed, they do not implement any welfare policies that can benefit children. You absolutely ignore the welfare benefit policies that the government of Bangladesh and government of India have been trying to implement in the past few years regarding giving food to children during tiffin time in order to make them come to school so that they do not starve, by involving them in certain community service activities where they can be productive and receive education at the same time. We tell you there are active implemented policies that are happening, you're ignoring the benefits of it. The biggest failure from opening government today was to fail to tell us that given that in the past 20 years, all of these subcontinent countries that you mentioned in your case have made immense progress in terms of making sure that child labor has decreased to a great extent, and we have increased the number of children who go to school. Why that isn't a good enough benefit for you to buy, and you didn't show us that, ladies and gentlemen. But
what are the sorts of jobs do we think after you make it legal the child is likely to take, right? We think, ladies and gentlemen, these are services in hotels and restaurants, right? Where you can work alongside other individuals who work there. We tell you it's also manufacturing production lines where you learn how, probably a candy bar is made and things like that. We think, ladies and gentlemen, the opening opposition sets their premise where they take it for granted that the moment in time, ladies and gentlemen, these things happen, the child won't have a choice. They take it for granted that the government can put any regulation whatsoever when they implement these policies. The reason why the regulation word is existent in the motion is because it says that the government will essentially make sure that one, the work area is has child protection. They make sure that the child isn't allowed to work in things that will physically harm them or mentally put a lot of pressure on them, right? We think it is also true that they will ensure that they have preset notions of what the child can or cannot do, what the hour per wage is, what is the maximum time the child can work there for, and the minimum that they can work there for. In conclusion, ladies and gentlemen, we clarify to you the nature of that legalization, right, and as to what it happens. Because we tell you, only when you legalize is when you allow more and more companies to accommodate child in their, ladies and gentlemen, companies, right? So that essentially means that more and more choices of children to go into the job sector, meaning that if you want to be a firefighter, you can also go and work there, ladies and gentlemen, maybe a lower level job, but you can still probably go and work there, right? We tell you this protects child's fascination and it allows
exploit their vulnerability, and secondly, if we can provide you with alternative solutions which would be far more sustainable and better for all parties involved. So let's talk about how we totally break down the entire argumentation by the entire House government. So understand that child labor is already illegal in this country. And the government already has an incentive to make sure that child labor does not get carried out in organizations and in corporations. But it still does not happen. Why does it not happen? And why legalizing it would not change that either? Because understand that eventually regulating this falls under the responsibility of profit-mongering corporations. And we tell you that the sole purpose of these organizations is to maximize profits itself. And they have little to no incentive at all to personally care for the child. Because realize that environmental laws already exist, labor laws already exist, safety laws already exist, but they still get violated because these corporations do not care about that at all, because they have ways to work around that. Even if you set age limits, even if you set up shift limits and whatnot, we tell you that these children will eventually be coerced to opt for these options because firstly, they're looking for those jobs in the first place because of necessity and
have that right to begin with. I'll be talking about three things, a couple of things in my speech. First of all, I'll be showing you the impacts that the narrative of age and ageism has on a micro level in this child's life. Second of all, I'll be showing to you why education is overhyped and how that's problematic. Thirdly, I'll be talking about the child's consent and how that's a rebuttal to most of the things that they have talked about so far. But before that, a few extraneous rebuttals. Opening comes up and tells us that what? Political structures and pressures will ensure you don't have a group which bargains for these children in the first place. But the problem here is the motion already fiats that regulation means you bring these things under government control. Why do we believe this is true? We've seen that government control can be a better bargaining chip for many industries than any form of labor unions can. Namely, government regulation has brought about things like minimum wages, like safer working conditions. The comparative here is this sort of legislature doesn't apply to an industry which the government refuses to recognize. At the point at which you recognize that this industry exists is the moment you can regulate it better, you can make the actors within those industry much better off to begin with.
To ultimately take a child from living under the poverty line. We tell you that we ultimately improve the standard of living for this child. We tell you that we want this child to move up the social ladder and for
hosted by IUB Ascension, where ideas soar. Now, this is going to be a long evening. I know you want to applause, but I have a duty here, and it takes me about 5 minutes to read from this, and some names will come up. You might want to applaud, but hold back. I'll give you a cue. That way you can applaud only a few times throughout my speech. Otherwise, this list has certain names who are celebrities here. You know these names. So just, and be patient. I see some of the young school debaters here getting restless. I'll get you by this very quickly, but you have to bear with me because I have a job to do here, and you can settle down that quadrant there. Okay, now. Thank you.
আয়োজিত আজকের এই চমৎকার অনুষ্ঠানে উপস্থিত সবাইকে ধন্যবাদ এবং সালাম জানাচ্ছি। অ্যামাজন ইমিগ্রেশন কর্তৃপক্ষ কর্তৃক আপনাদেরকে ধন্যবাদ জানাচ্ছি এই জন্য যে এমন একটি চমৎকার এবং মহৎ অনুষ্ঠানের সাথে আমাদেরকে সম্পৃক্ত করার জন্য।
Across the board. So this is a great achievement on behalf of a Bangladeshi company. And we feel definitely privileged to be a part of this organization. If we go a bit backward, Bikash has received the Best Employer Brand Award by the HRD Congress 8th edition. That is also a big achievement by Bikash. And we would like to mention that Bikash is currently the world's largest mobile financial service provider in the world. So we are really happy to be a part.
Great pleasure to see this contest which has been arranged by IUB, bringing together the finest debaters involving so many fine young men and women from around the country and indeed from countries beyond our border. I think IUB should be congratulated for this endeavor, and it gives me, as Editor-in-Chief of the Dhaka Tribune, great pride to be actually part of this event and to be able to take part in something of this quality and of this caliber. But I am going to pick up on a couple of things that he mentioned and perhaps add a little bit of my own 2 cents to it. Why is IUB interested in supporting debate, and why should a university do this? The reason that a university does this is because its core value, its core philosophy, particularly for IUB, is a liberal arts education. And there's nothing better that embodies the ideals of a liberal arts education than debate. Debate gives you the skills. Debate gives you the experience of empathy, and I want to talk a little bit about empathy. Empathy is the ability to see things from somebody else's point of view. It doesn't mean that you agree with that point of view. You may not. In fact, we often do not. We often have very strong opinions about any and all things. But it's important for us to appreciate that other people may have different points of view. And I think debate gives us a modality, a way of adjudicating between differences of opinion. And I think that's very important. In an age of increasing intolerance, in an age where people are being vilified, where people are being killed for being different, for having different points of view, for looking different, I think debate gives us a way of trying to understand differences, of trying to defend our points of view. It's not enough to have a point of view. You have to, I think, first and foremost, try to understand what it rests on. You have to be able to defend it. Otherwise...
Vice Chancellor,
Thank you. And more importantly, the subject that was chosen as the agenda of the grand finale. You see, this is an issue that has bothered our minds for many years.
IUB is dedicated, is very much dedicated and committed to create tomorrow's leaders of tomorrow. All of you out here, you are leaders for the future, both at home and abroad. Very important, one of the most important leadership qualities is public speaking. Public speaking, to be able to speak effectively, correctly, clearly, so that you are in a position to lead your followers. You become their mentor. Whatever profession you take, Whether you be a lawyer or a CEO of a company or you go into banks, in any profession that you choose.
From IIM, Ishwar Jati from Himalayas, Park Manikala from Delhi University, Nathan Hassani from Rat University, Raisa Pani Chaudhary from IIM, Raj Sharar from
the brain behind every design and every visual present in this campus over the last few days, Imtiaz Ali Pradhan.
Raisa Fareen, colleague Raisa Fareen. Raisa Fareen, well done, congratulations. Yes. Hey, wow, what a lovely.
Continuing on to our list of elaborate alumni, we're really happy that these people not only guided us, but it was amazing for us that over the last week, these people took times out of office, took times out of their teaching schedule, stayed with a wide range of activities, not just related to debate, but their own individual creativity to make this happen. So I'll be calling upon the organizers of the tournament, and they'll be rapidly coming over and collecting their awards. Ashikur Rahman, Ashraful Haq, Salwa Arakan, Abrar Shams Chaudhary, another face involved in almost every area and department of the tournament with selfless effort, Washik Fayaz. Syed Muhammad Islam, Sabir Ahmed Abi, Malika Zari, Asma Shireen, Imara Siddiqui, and lastly, Raswanul Ahmed Saqib. We have Tawhid Chaudhary, Muhammad Qasim Amin Khan, on third, our very own world champion from Bragg University, Akil Farhan Hussain. On fourth, the ever caring, ever smiling from IIT Dhaka University, Master Tasneem. From National Law School, Bangalore, Vipul Nanda.
Look, please, sir.
There are two people tied at third with an average of. The second student tied at third.
There.
Wasif Ali Khan.
Thank you. Separate. Envelope.
Editor of Dhaka Tribune, Mrs. Zafar Sohan. Please help me out the final words.
Thank you.